Good. I just want to, again, welcome all of you. It's good to see a lot of familiar names on our list here, and I love to see these familiar names as well as these new names. So again, I just want to welcome you, and I'm very excited about today's topic and today's guest. Mr. Gerry Petitmermet is a Thrive graduate, which means he has been through all the training tracks of Thrive and very much applying this training to his life, his family, his marriage, his ministry. And one of the things I'm really appreciative about Gerry is this fellow wants to be fully alive in Christ, and he wants to see the people around him fully alive. And Gerry's also a Shepherd's House board member. So Gerry, I want to welcome you to the Pastors Weekly. Thank you for being my guest today.
Well, thanks, Chris. I'm really honored, actually.
And you're going to talk to us about the leadership in the Immanuel Lifestyle, I see.
Yep. We can roll on that as soon as you wanted to. But, you know, Chris, one thing that you and I dialogued about that's very important is we're giving such a little snippet today. Yeah. Just kind of a very, very small sampling of possible effects and the power of what Immanuel Lifestyle really can mean to us.
Yes.
So I just kind of wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, so what you're saying is there's going to be a lot more where this comes from today.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge.
All right, Gerry, we've given you the controls there. If you want to click on show your screen.
Okie dokie. And here it comes.
There we go.
All right. Well, I guess for most of us that are in leadership, just the life of having people around us and what it can cause in our own lives can be quite impacting. And I think one of the biggest questions that I would want to put forth at the very beginning of this is, you know, would you be interested to reduce the impact that counseling has on your time and energy? And obviously, the best way to do that, from what I've been convinced of, is Immanuel Lifestyle. Well, what is Immanuel Lifestyle? It's developing a joy-filled relationship with Jesus. The amazing thing about Emmanuel is I've really been learning a lot about Jesus' style, and I am just so amazed to see that Jesus is so relational, and it's like taking people naturally to the solutions. And so it's not like he has to make them hang around, be stuck in the problems, as much as he wants to just have people relating to him and then actually showing them the solution to what they're feeling or what's going on in life. And the thing that sets Emmanuel apart from all other inner healing ministries is the fact that the model is based on connecting with Jesus first, building a joy connection with Jesus first. And then we take him with us to look at problems and issues. And it really does set Emmanuel apart from many other processes because it's, I think, Chris, as you brought out in your Share Emmanuel booklet, that it's so hard to find Jesus when you're in the sticker bushes. It's much better to get up into a place where you can look down on the sticker bushes and rather than try to go in there. So, and this connecting with Jesus first principle, I've seen it work in some of the most intense healing situations. But where it really becomes, I mean, really dynamic is when it enters into, like I've been starting to find out, into actually my lifestyle. To be just, you know, candid, I'm in a situation I'm not really enjoying, a relational situation. Well, I'm starting to learn the best question to ask at that point is, Jesus, where are you right now? Or what are you doing? Or what would you like me to know? So again, it's building that lifestyle of Jesus is there. I really want to express heartfelt appreciation to many of the people that have brought this together. But obviously I want to thank Jesus, God the Father, and the Holy Spirit, because God's intention is that we are actually healed, delivered, and made whole so we can relate to him with our whole heart. And then just out of that, we become life-giving to each other. And I really do. I want to thank the team at Shepherd's House, Dr. Jim Wilder, Chris Coursey, Ed Corey, and others that have been operating within that sphere. This process has been developing and improving over the years. And one of the richest resources and brother in regard to this ministry is Dr. Carl Lehman. So thanks to you guys. I thank God, and I thank you all for what you've done. Emmanuel is not a complex thing. It's simply, the Hebrew meaning is God is with me, always. But in reality, I think most of us find, especially in those kinds of relational situations that become very tough, we would be saying, really? It's almost like the times I need you to be with me the most, sometimes I don't feel you're really nearby. And so what do we do? What do we do when we don't feel Jesus is nearby and right in the middle of what we're in the middle of? The obvious answer is to grow an Immanuel lifestyle. And again, we're talking about just such a small segment of this, but it's been such a substantial life changer for me. And I've also been watching it in other people and seeing substantial changes, very healthy, good changes going on in them. Well, there's another how-to. There's the book, Share Emmanuel by Dr. Wilder and Chris Coursey. Another thing that you can find and receive personal Emmanuel ministry from a skilled facilitator. And it's really kind of funny. I said, don't wait for a reason. It's really funny that when we're looking for that joy connection with Jesus and then start looking at life, it's much easier when we're not in a crisis. I've got to admit, as a facilitator, it's much easier on me as a facilitator that I'm not having to coach somebody just out of that crisis briefly enough to start building that connection with Jesus. So don't wait for a reason to begin this process. You can arrange live sessions at your church that you and other leaders in your church can actually watch. Or you could visit a church that actually has sessions going on in their ministry. I, for one, am very blessed. I actually have an inner healing ministry team at our church. And that just, believe me, I express appreciation of the Lord on that on a regular basis. Thrive Conference, well, this, I guess we've already closed the door on this one, Chris, but the God's Hour at Thrive was actually what turned me to Emmanuel. And it's been a while, Chris, but I think after my first Thrive Conference, I called Chris on the phone and I said, I'd been practicing other inner healing methods. And I said, you know, Chris, Emmanuel is so safe and so easy to duplicate. I'm switching over and I want to immerse myself in this and learn about it. And obviously Dr. Carl's website, again, what a blessing he is to the body of Christ with the amount of very well thought information that he has just published for all of us to take advantage of. So definitely look at his. And last but not least, host an Emmanuel training event, because that'll kind of spark things off. And with that, Chris, we're going to go right back to you.
All right. I want to highlight some things here. One of the points you made, which I thought was very important for our listeners, is this is a very simple process that we're talking about here. And one of the beautiful things about the Share Emmanuel, or we call it the Emmanuel Lifestyle, Share Emmanuel, Carl calls it Emmanuel Approach, Emmanuel Experience. One of the beautiful things about the simplicity of this, Gerry, that I hear you really highlighting here is we start with that, we call it a 5-bar moment, but basically we're remembering a time where we felt like God was with us before. And we're using that as kind of our launching pad for everything else in this simple process. Some of us, frankly, we can't pull up a time where we felt like clearly that God was there with us, interacting with us. We might have indirect signs that God was there. We know by faith he was there, but we might not be able to pull up the file and go back there in our minds where God is still there in that particular event. So when that happens, we start with remembering joy, starting with appreciation or remembering God's gifts. And one of the things about this process, Gerry, and I think it's what you've really picked up on when you're at Thrive, is that first step is key because it kind of sets the stage for what happens next.
Absolutely.
So when I remember God being with me, one of the questions I can ask in that memory is, well, Lord, I remember where you were back there. Where are you right now as it relates to me? Now, in theory, I know you're here, but relationally, experientially, Lord, is there anything you want me to know about where you are right now? And we notice what thoughts come to mind. And again, we're assuming in all this we're kind of shifted into relational mode, which always helps us to have that clarity for seeing God with us. And after we have that awareness of God, we can say, okay, well, Lord, if we wanted to dig a little deeper, Lord, is there a time in my life where I was not aware of you that you would like to show me today? Mm-hmm. And we start noticing what thoughts or, well, basically what thoughts come up. Maybe there is something that Jesus might have us look at. And you know what, sometimes, Gerry, and I think you've experienced this in your ministry, sometimes God just wants us to enjoy him and his presence in that particular moment.
Absolutely.
But what I hear you saying, Gerry, is that as a recovery tool, this is a safe way for people to actually find resolution from some of their wounds.
Oh, hugely, Chris. Yeah, because because it's, even if you don't fully process, you can always end with that positive connection.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a win-win situation, basically.
Totally. Yeah.
All right. And I want to help our listeners know, again, the goal in this whole process is to keep an awareness of God being with us. Mm-hmm. And part of what makes trauma traumatic is because I lose that relational awareness of God being with me. And so what's happening is I'm not fully processing that experience. And Gerry, as you said, Carl Lehman has lots of really, really good information. He has free essays at emmanuelapproach.com and some of his websites, and lots of information out there. But one of the good things about the simplicity of this process is once I have that awareness, that connection of God being with me, I can also tell my my God story. All right, and so what that means is I can say, Gerry, you know, I just had this awareness of God being with me in a place that I wasn't aware of him before, and let me tell you what changed when I had that awareness of God being there. Suddenly I felt peaceful. Right. Suddenly I felt seen, and my breathing started to relax, my shoulders relaxed, I felt comforted, and so I can tell you my short little redemption story, which then primes you for this practice yourself.
See, and that's the infectiousness of the concept of Immanuel Lifestyle, because we have this environment developing where Jesus is right in the middle of this. He's right here with us, and it's pretty exciting. It really is.
So Gerry, when you're practicing this, say with other people or even introducing it, do you find that people are surprised, especially leaders? Do you find that leaders are surprised by the process or even the simplicity of the process?
I almost have to back up one step. Just at the sheer presentation of why don't you consider this? It's amazing that I think that so many people have experienced negativity when it came to inner healing, deliverance, these types of things that usually it's the leaders. I hate to say this, but usually it's the leaders that say, I'm kind of afraid of doing this. And
why do you think that is? Just what's your take on it?
I think they've been traumatized by other situations that would be delving into this area. And every one of those people, this is amazing because as I've walked with leaders on this, every one of them after the fact that had voiced that at my introduction or even before a session would begin, they would just go at the end of the session, this didn't go how I expected it at all.
Wow. So it's redemptive for them.
Oh, they said this was so gentle. So they go from fear literally to that point of going, I'm surprised how gentle this was. And of course I'm sitting back just smiling inside knowing I'm getting to watch Jesus' style in this process. And so they're experiencing Jesus' relational style. And again, he's not bogged down on the problem. The problem's not big for him.
So his yoke and burdens are very manageable, is what you're
Absolutely.
saying. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, and I want to really highlight this for leaders. One of the joys that I like what you're saying here, Gerry, because as a leader, I would see this as a very helpful tool to apply in my own life, my own ministry, my own staff, but also with praying with people that I know. It sounds like this is something that you can see pastors being able to use and to apply, whether it's a staff meeting or just praying for someone who might be hurting. This is a tool you're offering here.
Well, yeah, because I think in most cases, one of a pastor's biggest concerns seems to be, oh no, if I introduce something new, I'm going to be overwhelmed with, you can name it. And the irony is what Emmanuel's doing is lifting that off. Just a good example, Chris, is like even in our altar ministry, if it's appropriate, I will lead somebody through a brief Emmanuel when they come up for prayer.
Wow.
Rather than praying over them or whatever, or praying with them or about them, I'll actually just gently help them to that place of appreciation and then take them to that place of, maybe Jesus would like you to know something. And they're just astounded, when the Lord actually speaks to them and speaks right into their situation.
So some of our viewers might be wondering, like, how long would that take? Like, say you're going to go pray for somebody who's at the altar, they need prayer. You go up and you're going to just kind of give them a short little Emmanuel experience. How long could that take?
Oh boy, you're asking a loaded question there. and the reason it's a loaded question is that one of the things that's preeminent about this type of ministry is it's no different than the gospel. If I don't have it, it can't be just a scripted thing, because if Jesus is relational, I need to be relational.
Well, that's an important point right there. If Jesus is relational, we need to be relational.
It's kind of like that ongoing joke that you and I had setting this message up, but it is. If he's relational, then so when those people come, it's a matter of, there's a skill set involved here, but the biggest thing is that I actually know God is with me, that I know Jesus is with me when I'm asking this other person to consider, Jesus might be with you in this. Would you be willing to ask him? 4 to 5 minutes, usually.
So where I'm going is this could be used in a church service.
Absolutely. Right. If the team has had enough
some experience.
Yes, they need the actual walking with Jesus Immanuel lifestyle experience themselves.
All right. Now I want to bring up, I want to pull up a question here for our audience, because I'm going to guess many of us are going to have a variety of thoughts when we start thinking about this Emmanuel process, this Emmanuel lifestyle that we're talking about today. And so one of the questions I want to invite our listeners to jump in is, what resistance comes to mind as you consider the Share Emmanuel Lifestyle for you, or even implementing this for your staff or your family or your congregation? Let's be real, right? I mean, what Gerry and I are talking about could bring up some fears. All right, what if this gets out of hand? What if something gets out of control? What if somebody gets stirred up in their pain and but they don't know how to quiet their pain? Now, of course, Gerry and I will have answers for that, but more importantly right now, I want to hear from you, viewers, what comes to your mind as you start thinking about any resistance about considering the Share Emmanuel Lifestyle as an actual, not just a way of life, but as a tool that I can use to minister to the people that God has entrusted me with. Or maybe resistance that you would foresee on the horizon if you were to try to implement this with other people. So this is a chance, audience members, for you to engage. If you have a webcam, by all means, jump on board with Gerry and I. If you want to type in your question, Danny can let us know. But we want to hear from you. Let's put some of these things on the table for examination. What resistance can you foresee if you were to introduce this to your staff or your congregation, your leadership team, your elders?
All right, we've got Bill here. Bill,
Okay,
I'm
Bill.
going to unmute you.
Welcome, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hi. Yeah, I'd say, well, it's really good to be with you guys today.
Good to be with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Gerry, I think I might have been in level 1 Thrive with you back in 2010.
Oh, okay.
But the hardest part for me is the people who are just so afraid of the Lord, and that they're convinced already that there's no way that they're going to be able to hear Him.
Yes.
And when you talk to them about listening to the Lord, their fear is really what's primarily going on. So it's almost like you got to kind of sneak them into a place of being appreciating and thankful, and or you use the appreciation seat.
Yep. And they probably have good reasons, right, Bill? I mean, they probably have good reasons for their resistance and their fear.
Yes, that they've had some training in getting fear, But they're even the most well-trained flesh can, the spirit can overcome.
Yeah. Amen. So. Amen. Well, you've put the flashlight on a very important one there, Bill, that
Absolutely.
I think is going to be a very common, probably, and Gerry, you might have some thoughts on this as well, but I'm going to guess that's going to be a frequent roadblock you're going to run into.
Oh, it's you've got to be realistic, Bill. So often, appreciation isn't it ironic that God tells us to be thankful over and over again? Because it actually turns the part of our brain on that is relational. And appreciation, I have become convinced, is always the gateway. Sometimes I'll spend a full session just helping somebody go, oh, I can appreciate something. I mean, that's the headway, because then that turns on the pathways that lead to the connecting with Jesus or possibly working through the things. But the appreciation seems to be the critical entry point when you have a situation like that. And I don't know what your thoughts are, Chris, about that. But
I'm glad that Bill brought this up. I remember a time when I was training a church in this very thing. They wanted to see how well it worked, so they gave me one of the toughest people in the congregation who basically had really strong feelings about hearing from God. And I remember sitting across from her in one of the sessions, and she had a look on her face that told me this was going to be interesting. And she said, I just want you to know up front, this is a waste of your time, because God doesn't talk to me. I've been in I've been in counseling for 30 years.
Oh,
I've spent
so good.
tens of thousands of dollars, and basically God does not speak to me, so this is a waste of your time. And so I synchronized, or I tuned, and I said, well, thank you for sharing that. I would feel discouraged as well. And I said, well, just flatter me. We're just going to practice a couple things. I said, no expectation. This is practice. And the moment you start talking about practice, which is what I liked about what you shared, Gerry, that practice helps. I'll often say, we're just going to practice something. No pressure, may or may not work, but we're just going to practice. And so I asked her if there was a memory that brought her joy, a joyful time in her life, and she could only think of one thing. And that was good enough for me. I said, okay, one thing, and let's talk about that. So I had her tell me her joy memory, and we talked about it. I said, so what does that feel like in your body? And I just asked questions, and after about 15 minutes of talking about that joy memory, I said, okay, let's just pray. You know, I just want to pray if that's okay, and I just want to see if there's anything that Jesus might want you to know today as we remember that joyful memory. And so we focused on the joy memory for a little while, and by the end of that session, it was an hour-long session, she had a big smile on her face because she, for the first time in her life, felt like God was with her. And not just there in a very disconnected way, but God was there with a smile on his face, delighting in her, and she was glowing. And that's why I think Bill said something very important here, that you are going to encounter that resistance. And we don't force feed people. We gently see if they're willing to practice. And we always start out, if there's not that interactive memory, which is where I perceive God is still there, still with me, we practice the remembering appreciation. And unless we have that foundation first, we don't do anything else. We just focus on appreciation. And so it can be, that's one way that I would encourage our viewers today. You are going to encounter people who have resistance, and that resistance is there for a good reason. So we don't want to try to force anything. And Gerry, I suspect you would say that's a wise step in trying to gently extend the invitation, but we're not going to force it.
Well, and the other thing is to break the religious paradigm that Jesus doesn't deal with normal aspects of life. Like, maybe you can enjoy a chocolate chip cookie that just came out of the oven. Or can you think of, and one serious situation I had, it was this lady just knowing her little dog would greet her at the door when she got home. And that opened up to just the same kind of thing that you were expressing, Chris, an incredible connection with Jesus by the end of that session. So when it comes to starting that appreciation, it's kind of like, let's keep it maybe very simple.
All right. Well, Bill, thank you. I think you really hit the nail on the head with that comment, and I want to again invite our viewers, jump on in here. Gerry and I could talk about this stuff all day, but frankly, we want to hear from you.
That's right.
So as you also think about resistance that might come up or fears that Bill identified, there might also just be some benefits. You know, we've talked about some of the benefits, but you might have some more thoughts on even benefits as we would consider the Share Emmanuel Lifestyle. What would happen if your staff practiced this daily, weekly? What would change? Would anything change? What would you predict would change? Maybe if your congregation knew how to use this to resolve conflicts or whatever. What would you see as the benefits as you're starting to hear us talk about the Share Emmanuel Lifestyle?
All right, we're going to try to get Keith on the line here, see if his headset's working.
Okay, Keith, let's see if we can get you on here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Welcome.
You can. Oh, good. Oh, very good. Thanks.
Good to have you here.
I'm a lay person at our church, but we've had Emmanuel for a number of years now.
Oh,
and
nice.
Just an amazing ministry to people, and seeing people receive from the Lord has been, we call it a twofer, because we get blessed too when the people receive from the Lord. But we have had, even in our church, where we have a fair acceptance of healing prayer in general, and even of Emmanuel, We still have a hard time with some of the senior staff actually getting to experience it for themselves.
Okay.
And so I guess one of our challenges is we're generally accepted in our church and have ministered to over 100 people each year in the last couple of years.
That's
Praise God.
But how do we get the senior staff to
so
be able
senior
to
staff. So Keith, do you, as we think about this, I suspect this some of our viewers might be able to relate with this. What can you interpret why there might be resistance from senior staff? Is it just your church in general, or would you say this might be something other churches could also expect? Is there any reason, any pattern that you can help us think through?
Well, I think you mentioned one earlier where the awareness of things that have failed in the past or burned people in the past might be something that caused hesitance.
Yes.
And we have had some other prayer ministries that were very successful too. And so I think in some cases it's, well, we've already done that. We don't need something different.
Another.
Yet another prayer ministry. And so I think that kind of adds into it too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Keith.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I would say that's something that we will run into, is kind of like, well, this is the same thing that we've done before, only just a different spin, a different label, a different name, and why do we need this again? Or if there was some unfortunate negative experiences with any kind of healing ministry, prayer ministry, I would anticipate there would be some resistance to trying this. Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have some thoughts? Keith has already been seeing some changes and applying this in his own church. And while not everybody's fully on board with it, it sounds like he's really this is growing. So that's encouraging to hear. Anybody else have some thoughts of benefits? Why would you see value in this? Or maybe there would be some resistance as well. Any thoughts? Otherwise,
We got a quiet panel today.
All right. Well, let me move on to the next, because I have an example that I want to tell you all. And again, as a pastor and a leader, in my mind, what I'm thinking about this whole process is we need something that, one, it has to be biblical, two, it has to be effective, and three, it has to be very practical, that I don't have to have 20 years of training in order to do this or take it somewhere. This has to be very much something that you could experience and then it grows, which is really what we're after at Shepherd's House. We call that self-propagating recovery. So I had the opportunity to sit down with a team of elders and pastors who were, some of them had a little bit of a background in healing ministry, some of them did not. And I knew going into this meeting, I can talk about Emmanuel, I could talk about this for hours, but I knew they needed to experience this. They needed to at least practice it. If there was going to be any kind of buy-in, they had to taste it for themselves. So we talked about this process. Where is it in Scripture? Why is this biblical? How does it work? How did this process get developed? And they had a lot of good questions. But I noticed my time was running out with these leaders, and I had about 15 minutes left. And so I told them, I said, look, I know you guys have a lot more questions. What I would like to do now is give you a little practice. And they were, okay, sure, let's do this. So I had them remember a time where they felt like God was with them, where they felt like they felt seen by God or taken care of by God, and I gave them a few minutes to think about that and think about how it felt in their bodies and so forth. And then after about 5 minutes of that, I said, okay, now I'm just going to pray. And so I said, okay, well, Lord, as we remember these times where we feel like you're with us and you're there, Lord, is there anything you would like to share with us today about where you are in this moment as it relates to us? Is there anything you'd just like us to know today? And I gave him about another 4 or 5 minutes, and after that question, at the end of the 4 or 5 minutes, I noticed all of them had tears in their eyes, which really surprised me.
Yeah.
And then, I have about 4 or 5 minutes left before my meeting's over, so I said, well, let's talk about this. You guys, what happened? And all of them shared how they felt like God met them, and he actually had something to say about these current crises that they were going through, most of them family. And they really suddenly felt seen by God. They felt like God was with them. They no longer felt alone. It was just a very impactful moment for them. We're talking 15 minutes here. These are first-timers. They've never experienced Share Emmanuel. They really hadn't heard it before that meeting. They hadn't heard of it. So what we're talking about, and I think Gerry had mentioned this earlier, that as we practice this for ourselves, and we develop this as a lifestyle for ourselves, it actually becomes quite natural to share this with people, with other people. And so as pastors especially, what a valuable tool we're talking about here for us to be restored as we begin to restore people around us. So that's my little example. And Gerry, I wanted to, as we're going along here with examples, you said that you had a few testimonies that might help our listeners to hear how other people are responding when you introduce this into their ministries and their families and their lives.
So much of it, Chris, is kind of almost like exactly what you described. Mm-hmm. It's almost like God set up the right people in the senior staff to where they experienced it, and they were just going, it's similar, but this is different. It's a lot more gentle. And it's just been an interesting thing, because the leadership thing, again, is I think there's also the busyness. There's so much going on. And so I guess all we can do is just kind of live it out, and then, let it show up.
So Gerry, let me jump in real quick. You say you put your finger right on an important topic for us pastors. Busyness, overwhelmed, we have too much to do, we lack the time to get it all done. Will this, what we're talking about, would this actually help busy, overwhelmed pastors who are, many of us, feeling burned out?
Well, the thing that's amazing is our senior pastor, I'd heard him make some sideline comments. And so with this coming up, I decided I'd ask him specifically. And he said literally since they've introduced inner healing ministry at the church, his counseling load has dropped by 50%.
Wow.
Now, he hasn't actually, done a quantitative study of that, but this brother, he's got a good enough picture of his activity.
So he's already feeling the difference, is what you're saying, by these tools being offered.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the clearest ones is when he'll have a situation come to him for counseling, the first thing he will do is he'll say, well, we do have an inner healing ministry here. I think it'd be good for you to have a session before we have counseling.
Wow.
Nice. Here's the funny part. Jesus takes care of the issue that wasn't the issue that took care of the issue that they were requesting counseling for in the first place.
Wow.
Now, I mean, that's and we all know that the Lord does work in process. And but there's still that miraculous thing where that person actually was able to meet Jesus in the midst of their life, and then not need have to burn out the pastor by, drawing on him and his energy and his emotions, dealing with the situation.
That's exciting.
And the other thing that he mentioned that is very, very fascinating is that, like, a spontaneous event that happened was people were actually released of, stuff that was bogging them down. Sorry about the family in the background there.
Okay. It's good to see the family there.
Yeah, it's like normal life here. There was this reality of, as people were released from their stuff, their giftings came alive in the body.
Wow.
So as a pastor, he's standing back and he's watching this going on, and he's just going, this is truly amazing, to be seeing that happen.
And is that building credibility, Gerry, with this whole process when he's observing these kinds of changes? I mean, that has to help the credibility issue of what you're trying to share in your life and your ministry.
I have to say it, I'll be very candid, because all of you people have taken the time to, attend this webinar, that he said something that was profound. He said, basically, Gerry, what you are doing with this Emmanuel method is going to speak for itself. And they had other healing ministry going on in the church. And he said, all you've got to do is just keep doing what you do, and it's just going to speak for itself. You don't need to talk. Basically he was being very pastoral, and he didn't want people hurt or displaced or whatever, but just very simply, it's a very effective method. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of staying just steady, I guess.
As you're sharing, I think this is helping our viewers to hear how this can affect pastor and leaders. What I'd want to touch on for a moment, in case some of our viewers are wondering, well, what are the risks? As you think about this, if I am a pastor of a congregation and I say, you know what, I want this to be a part of my staff meetings. I want this to be part of how we do church, part of who we are, the fabric of our church. I want this. What would you say are the risks? Are there some risks that might be common with maybe it's inexperience of facilitators who are trying this, or anything comes to your mind that we would be able to have our fire extinguisher on hand if people are trying to do this for their church? Maybe there's some common mistakes that people make and get themselves tangled up as they're trying to practice this as a way of life for their church. Any thoughts come to mind on that?
Here's the immediate one. We can never separate Jesus making us whole from Jesus wanting to mature us. It's a beautiful synchronized dance. And so there has to be that balance of wanting the healing, desiring the healing, but then also to be doing the maturing process that, obviously way too much topic there.
So let me add to that. So if I'm, say, one of the facilitators in a church who are going to be training other people and helping the staff maybe to learn this, if I'm not applying this in my own life, would you caution me about trying to fix everybody else around me?
Well, totally. Totally, because if it's the old thing that you've got to have that in your life. You've got to have that. Again, it's just like with the altar call or the altar prayer ministry. This is not a list of 1, 2, 3 how to accomplish inner healing. And so I think I'm just trying to look for, you're asking for those cautions. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is that people need to experience Emmanuel and know what the internal process feels like for them personally with Jesus. And they are going to be safe facilitators if they're doing that.
Yeah. That's. I think you put words to it right there. That basically, we want our viewers to really consider that if you're going to practice this and you want to introduce it to your church or your staff, take some time or have someone take time with you to practice this for yourself. Otherwise, you could expect there to be problems if you haven't tasted from the well yourself, but you're offering everybody else a drink. You don't have the experience to go on, and so that's one of the things, Gerry, I just want to mention I appreciate about you, because you've really worked on applying this in your own life, your own family, your marriage. You've been applying this personally for a number of years, and out of that experience, now you have something that you can offer those at your church and the leaders that God has put in your life. So I can see a lot of wisdom to that.
Yeah, there's definitely the pool to draw from, so to speak.
All right, very good. Well, we've got just a few minutes left, and I want to throw out a couple final thoughts that I had for our viewers here. And in other words, can we afford to use this? Is part of that whole value or the perceived value here, as I gave my example, we can talk about this stuff all the time, but unless we actually experience it ourselves, it becomes just one more thing.
Yes.
And there's not that transformation that you would want to see. So I hope that this message is coming across today that Gerry and I are really trying to bring home is this is something that we can actually practice ourselves. But can we not afford to use this? In other words, there's a cost of not dealing with maybe the resistance that Bill mentioned earlier with some of the fears. I mean, I would imagine for those of us with fears of even, well, God's not going to hear me, or why even bother, surely that's going to affect our relationship with Christ if we don't feel like he's reliable or he's willing to interact with us, to be with us, to reveal himself, or meet us in some of our dark places, our painful places.
Now, earlier you had your question about what benefits come to mind. Claire had answered as you were giving your example, so I hadn't read it yet.
Okay.
That the benefit she sees is stronger love-based decisions, which I think also answers, can we afford not to use it? No, we need those stronger love-based decisions. So.
Amen. Thank you, Claire.
Yes, it's a good comment.
That's a good point. I really like that. There's some fruit that I think, even Gerry, as you mentioned, there's fruit from this process that as pastors we can experience that fruit in our congregations, in our ministries. And again, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, you've said there's a lot more where this came from. We're going to tell our listeners, again, where we can find some of that. But hopefully a picture is being painted today that'll at least pique some curiosity to want to learn more about what this looks like. All right, any other thoughts? Got about another minute or two left before I start giving you some of those resources. I'd love to hear. If you have another question for Gerry, this would be the time before we scoot along with the rest of our show here.
Well, you can go ahead and talk again.
Is that Bill?
Hey.
Bill,
Hey, Bill.
good to hear from you again. What's on your mind?
Well, I would just encourage everyone to, to put in the few minutes and start trying it, and that's where you know where the rubber meets the road, and out of that experience, he's the one who we're going to be spending eternity with, and what I've found is that it's the lies that we believe that really separate us from him, and he was really eager to talk to us about those things. And when we're talking with him, something very powerful about the way he speaks to us is we're able to believe the truth when he tells us. But not, sometimes I have a hard time when my wife tells me, but not so much when Jesus tells me.
Good point.
Oh,
Good point.
Do you mean, Bill, like when a good friend says, well, where's Jesus in this, when you're a little distraught?
Yeah.
Just one of those little gentle reminders.
Yeah. So I would just encourage everyone to go ahead and jump in, and I think it's one of the most important aspects of the Christian walk. It's had many names and many explanations throughout history, but it's simply that my sheep hear my voice, and when we hear him, he's the one we're serving. He's the King.
Amen.
And we spend the time listening to him. That's how things get directed. That's how we get on the right path. That's how we avoid being deceived. The world is getting darker, so we definitely need to hear him every day.
Amen to that. You know, Bill, I appreciate your thoughts here. There's this word, Greek New Testament word that Jesus will frequently use about knowing Him. And my sheep will know me, and it's called the name is gnosko, and it implies this very intimate interaction of this experience with Him. And that's what I hear Bill really highlighting for us. Is it's one thing for us to talk about this today, and I hope it's been helpful and intriguing. But ultimately, where we're all heading here is we want you to practice this for yourself, or find someone who can sit down with you and walk you through it and practice this. And as Bill said, this can take a few minutes. It doesn't have to take an 8-hour session. Although, I mean, there are things we'll need to troubleshoot, figures and different things. But it doesn't have to be as hard as it might sound. And I really hope that we're conveying that today. I just want to highlight a few resources here. One of the goals that I have, because this is a forum, you know, many of you, some of you are pastors, some of you are just curious, some of you are spouses, some of you are in a leadership position of some way. My goal specifically for pastors is I want to have a smaller focus group that will help pastors be able to confide and share some of the heavy things on their hearts. As many of us pastors on a forum like this, especially since it's being recorded, we're not going to want to share some of the really deep, heavy stuff because we just don't feel safe doing that, or it might get back to our church members, and there's just all kinds of reasons why we need a smaller focus group. And so I'm just going to, again, I'm going to invite those of you who would be interested in some kind of consultation group where we would practice the Immanuel lifestyle, actually. I invite you to email me if you're interested in that. I am looking for enough people to do these on maybe groups of like 7 people or so where we could practice this on a much smaller level. What else? We've got a Joy Starts Here event coming up, all of you, this October, actually, the 3rd through the 5th, where how do you start joy in your congregation? How do you start joy in your family? How do you start joy in your school? And especially for churches and families, the Share Emmanuel is going to be a part of that picture. So it would, at school, depending on the school and so forth, but I want to invite you to check out this event. Go to our website and learn more about Joy Starts Here. This is a very special Track 4 event, which is basically our applications event. And there's a lot more Joy Streams coming up here on the horizon. I've got my friend and colleague David Tackle, who I want to give a shout out to. David actually has a lot of good resources on hearing God, on spiritual formation, on interacting with God. He's the developer of the Forming module, which is part of the Thriving Recovery Your Life program. So I tell you what, you're going to want to hear what David has to say on July 25th. It's discerning our discernment, factors that influence our discernment. And I'm very excited to have David back. He's one of our regular guests and just always has good stuff to share. We've got Ken Smith coming back on more on the 4+ stories that every pastor should ask his congregation to tell. We've got Pastor Daryl Brazel coming back on why joy grows best in the light. And I've already told Jerry I want to have him back because I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So hopefully we can find a time in one of these slots in September, Jerry, where I can get you back here. There's just I just feel like we're just barely scratching the surface. Friends, you could learn more about our new Joy Starts Here book, which also a big part of this book is the Share Emmanuel Lifestyle and how to grow joy. And let's see, we have a Joy Starters blog with my friend and colleague as well, Carol Brown. I encourage you to go to joystarters.com and you can hear some of what we're covering on these Joy Streams as well as more information. So come and visit us at our blog, interact with us there. And again, there's a lot more where this came from. Dr. Jim Wilder has lots of wonderful audio teachings called Jim Talks, where you can learn more about these topics that we're touching on with the pastors weekly, and how to introduce joy and the life model to your congregation. We're going to start having sermons and sermon curriculum that you can use as well for your church. So visit us at lifemodel.org or our new website, joystartshere.com. A lot of good stuff there. And pastors, if you're interested in bringing this to your church, how can you actually start making this a way of life for your church? Lots of good information. Go to thrivingrecovery.org. You can learn more about Ed Corey, Jim Wilder, David Tackle, all the developers of this brilliant package that they've put together. And there's a lot of good joy streams that Ed Corey does. I really hope you'll attend some of Ed's joy streams. He's just got a lot of good information that he's putting out there, which they're a lot longer and a lot more time for questions. So please I encourage you to please check those things out. Well, Gerry, it's gone by way too fast, but I want to thank you for being my guest here on the Pastors Weekly. Thank you for your wisdom and your experience, and I suspect you were a blessing for all of our viewers today, and I look forward to having you back.
Yeah.
And Denny, as always, thank you for your faithfulness to make these happen. We could not do this without you, so thank you for your work.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you, Denny. And all of our viewers, thank you for taking the time to join us today. I hope we've given you some food for thought to think about. And just pray that you'll be able to practice the Immanuel lifestyle for yourself. And our God is faithful, and so we bless him today. But thank you for being with us, and I look forward to seeing you in just a couple weeks. Have a good day.
And as you leave, please complete the little survey.
Yes.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.